Welcome to the Working on Wellness On-Demand Learning Series. I'm Jen Anderson, Clinical Quality Improvement Director for Community Health Association of Mountain Plains States, also known as CHAMPS. CHAMPS supports the needs of health centers in Colorado, Montana, North Dakota, South Dakota, Utah, and Wyoming. Each episode in this on-demand learning series was brought to you with the generous support of our partners at the Rocky Mountain Public Health Training Center. Each of the episodes in this series was recorded in June of 2021, and each provides a different presentation from an expert in the fields of psychology, resiliency, or mindfulness, and are designed to help you reflect on your state of being following the COVID-19 pandemic. Some episodes offer tips for personal resilience, some focus on the specific needs of healthcare providers, and some help you think about the opportunities to support others in the organizations that you're a part of or that you lead. Each episode is available for you to view and share with others at your leisure. Additional resources to accompany each training can also be found on the CHAMPS website where these recordings are housed. We hope that attending this on-demand training will enable you to bring new skills and tools to your job, strengthen the ability of your health center to deliver high-quality primary care to your communities. When you're done watching this presentation, please take a moment to complete the brief evaluation that you can find linked under each presentation. So for this episode today, we'll hear from Dr. John Sommers-Flanagan. Dr. Sommers-Flanagan is a professor of counseling at the University of Montana, a clinical psychologist and author and co-author of over 100 publications, including 9 books and many professional training videos. His books, co-written with his wife Rita, include Clinical Interviewing and Suicide Assessment and Treatment Planning, a strengths-based approach. To maintain his happiness in his wild and precious spare time, John loves to run slowly, dance poorly, laugh loudly, and produce homemade music videos. John has a free resource blog at johnsommersflanagan.com. John, thank you so much for sharing your time with us today. And now over to you.
Thank you, Jen, for the nice introduction, and welcome everyone to 1 Hour of Happiness. This is a video recorded session, and so I hope that we can maintain some connection and engagement despite the fact that you're watching a recorded version, because this 1 hour of happiness includes what everyone should know about this thing that we call happiness. What a challenging thing to do in an hour. In the beginning, psychology spent about 100 years, probably more than that, studying, and don't take this personally, but what's wrong with you? And also, you shouldn't take it personally because it's what's wrong with me. It's the focus on what's wrong with humans, what's wrong with all of us psychologically. And the focus was on psychopathology, on mental disorders, on anxiety, depression, suicide, and all those acronyms: OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, oppositional defiant disorder, post-traumatic stress disorder, all those disorders. That really was the main focus. And Freud, who my wife always hates it when I quote him, but he was so depressed and so depressive that really he talked about working with people on their neurotic misery, just so that they could get up to the level where they were able to use tools to deal with their common unhappiness. And so Freud really wasn't trying to work with people to help make them happy, but more to help them deal with common unhappiness of being human. In the beginning, the focus was really to help people just like you to become more aware of your problems, of your deficiencies, of your neurotic tendencies, and then to try to help you. And then oftentimes it was not a direct like, oh, let's apply some counseling or psychotherapy to you and your problem, and then you will be better. But oftentimes it was a process that was very frustrating, and it is a process that's very frustrating because oftentimes we intermittently at least fail in our efforts to address our own or fix our own problems. And they don't just get fixed and go away. And so this is a pretty depressive beginning to a talk on happiness. I'm becoming aware of that. One other historical anecdote, a psychologist named David Myers did a study that he published, a review of all of the content of the articles published in Psychology from 1967 to the year 2000. What he found, I mean, and you can see the numbers, they're very disproportionate, maybe 2,500 articles about life satisfaction, but 54,000 articles on depression, 41,000 articles on anxiety versus 1,700 articles on happiness, 5,500 articles on anger, and 415 on joy. The overall ratio of that was summarized as 21-1. How can this be? How could it be that psychology got so hooked into studying that which is negative or problematic or psychopathological about the psyche? I think I have an answer to that. I hope I do. And the reason why is it seems to be the way most of our brains are built. You can see here the Charlie Brown cartoon, the Peanuts cartoon, where he is sitting up in bed saying, sometimes I lie awake at night and I ask myself, where have you gone wrong? Then a voice says to me, this is going to take more than one night. Most of us probably think of negative thoughts at the rate of 21-1, or maybe more balanced, 5 negative thoughts to every 1 positive thought. It just seems to be natural. It seems to be the way our brains are built. The evolutionary psychology people would say it's the way our brains evolved because we had to look out for what's wrong. But in 1998, we enter a new phase, a new dawning in the field of psychology. A man named Martin Seligman became the American Psychological Association president. And he, at his address in San Francisco in 1998, introduced us all. And I happened to be there in San Francisco. And I remember kind of scratching my head thinking, this is interesting, but he introduced us all to positive psychology. Essentially, he was saying, let's study joy. Let's study happiness. Let's study what strengthens people. Let's study what makes people emotionally well and healthy. So in the years since 1998, Seligman and many others have become incredibly enthusiastic about positive psychology, and they have done lots of research. They've balanced it. Is it completely balanced? Maybe not, probably not. But they have created a number of evidence-based happiness or well-being interventions or activities. And this is where we're going today. I'm going to introduce you to 5 of those evidence-based happiness strategies. When I say evidence-based, that means that there is research to support that by engaging in these activities, many people, not everybody, will reap some benefits, feel a little bit better. But I want to emphasize that these strategies do not quickly or automatically work for everyone. It's not a magical process. But before I get into those, I want to dwell a little bit more on this natural problem or obstacle we have to feeling happy. The question I have here is, are you happy? You can see there's one little happy smiley face icon in a sea of frowny faces. What happens to us? What happens to humans when we're forced to reflect on this question? I hate it when people ask me, are you happy? And of course, as you probably know, I teach a happiness course at the University of Montana. And so, of course, people are all into asking me if I'm happy. I remember we lived in Great Britain for about 5 months many years ago, and their way of approaching people, they would say, instead of like, hi, how are you? They say, are you okay? And I remember thinking, I don't know, am I okay? Well, what happens when people say, "Are you happy?" And if I were to say, "Are you happy, Jen?" It would kick off this internal process where your self-awareness, your self-consciousness increases. You try to do a quick evaluation. Am I happy? And then people often then will say, well, yes, I'm happy. And as soon as people say yes, at least what they tell me is afterwards they feel, I think it was a little bit fake. I'm not really that happy. I'm not as happy as I said I was. And so it begins this really, I think, in some ways, destructive self-evaluation process. And if you say no to the question of are you happy, it can't help but make you think and feel a little more depressed about yourself. My point with this is that we're really not meant to be consistently happy, or we shouldn't expect ourselves to experience a consistently happy emotional state. We shouldn't be continuously monitoring our emotional state to see, am I happy? Am I happy enough? So stop it. There's a really funny video online that you can watch Bob Newhart doing a video of the way he does therapy is he just tells people to stop it, stop doing those negative things. But you should stop that question of are you happy, because it's really not a yes or no question. The happiness researchers like to transform the question into, are you happier? Which I don't even like that question. It's just, again, they're trying to say it's a continuum. We should monitor ourselves to see where we are in the continuum. So there's some usefulness to that, yes. But my sense is that preoccupation with the state of happiness will, in most cases, make you feel worse. It will make you feel worse. So I'm recommending right now, don't monitor too much the mood or the emotional state of, am I happy? That doesn't mean you shouldn't ever do that, but I think we often become too preoccupied. As an example, there are so many stupid, really stupid happiness quotations on the internet that I feel unhappy about it. And so I'm showing you here, this is just a little array of some of those ways that we get triggered. You can see there's the, are you happy now? Are you happy or sad? You can take a quiz and find out if you're happy or sad. Don't do it. You don't need that information. Are you happy now? Are you happy at work? That kind of bombardment of questioning will, in most cases, make you feel worse. And so let's just see if we can feel this together for a few seconds. I'd like to show that video. It gives me faith that there is happiness in there, right? And that baby expresses it so well. And I wish I was in my life right now at the point where just ripping paper would give me such joy and happiness. I also play this because there are happy distractions out there. And I've just complained about the internet and lots of those happiness sayings. But I also want to say that there are some happy distractions out there in the real world and on the internet that are good. They're good. We need them. But they're also only happy distractions, and they are not this thing that I'm going to talk about today, which is a bigger form of happiness. Here's my true confession. When it comes to defining happiness, I want you to know that I'm not just talking about this kind of smiley happiness, sometimes referred to as hedonistic happiness or materialistic happiness. And the reason I'm not talking about that is because that's really not what psychologists have narrowed in on. Certainly it's good to have our moods boosted, and we should know what boosts our moods temporarily. But that's not the prescription to longer term happiness because of a couple of things. One is a thing we call hedonic adaptation, and the other one is a thing that we call the opponent process. theory of emotions. Just a little bit, this is maybe more technical than anyone really wanted, but the phrase hedonic adaptation refers to the fact that your new car or your new house or your new boyfriend or girlfriend or partner or your fancy award that you got or your facelift or whatever it is that gave you a little emotional up or kick and that felt really good, put you in a good mood, those things will get old and you will want more. In other words, we will adapt to those new, fun, good things that enter into our lives and we will want more. That's just true. The research on it is pretty overwhelming. The other little theoretical piece is that there's a thing called emotional opponent process theory. And what that really states is what goes up must come down in terms of emotions, and what goes down must come up. My mother had a saying she used to say to my sisters and I often in the morning was, the saying was, sing before breakfast, cry before night. It's not a very, apparently she didn't want us to sing in the morning before we had our breakfast. And I'm not sure it's great advice because I kind of like to sing in the morning. Well, I like to sing anytime, but I think she was on to something, right? If we start off too high, we may be crashing soon. I think we see this in our children, and often we see it in ourselves. And really what's interesting is the research on depression, fascinating. And that is most people over time get over depression. Most people get over grief naturally without any kind of treatment. And it seems like that our emotions come back up somewhat naturally. Of course, not perfectly and not naturally for all people, but there is a tendency for that. So when it comes to defining happiness, I am using an old term used by Aristotle, where he talked about eudaimonic happiness. And eudaimonic happiness is not mood-based happiness, although we often feel some mood improvements associated with eudaimonic happiness. It's the kind of happiness that involves living in a way that's consistent with our own deep values, living in a healthy way, physically, psychologically, socially, spiritually, emotionally, and more. And so the secret to happiness is, of course, no secret, and that it takes work. It takes effort. It isn't something that we can really accomplish with too many distracting YouTube or internet videos that will bring us up. Not that those are bad. Nothing wrong with watching some funny cat videos, although the one I'm really liking the best now are the funny goat videos, baby goat videos. They're hilarious, and it's good to have uppers in our lives that we can count on. And now, before I get into the 5 strategies, I would like to talk about 3 big principles of happiness practice. The first principle I've kind of already alluded to, and that is nothing works for everyone, right? Even evidence-based treatments or psychotherapies or counseling does not work for everyone, because the research it's based on is based on averages. And so on average, the research says that these 5 strategies that I'm going to go through today will improve your mood and help you feel like you have a higher level of wellness. Okay. On average, it will help people feel better, but it's not going to work for everyone, because on average, some people might find that a minority of people might find that they make you feel worse. And that's possible even with a research supported approach. And so instead of thinking this should work, and if it doesn't, there's something wrong with me, instead, I would suggest this second principle, and that is to pick a tool, pick an intervention, pick a practice, and then try it using an experimental mindset. In other words, with a mindset of, I'm going to try this out and see if it helps, see if it makes a difference to me in my life. And so maybe 1 out of 5 or 2 out of 5 of these strategies that I described today you will find will work for you, but they all won't. And so what's important is to approach them, try them out with an open mind and evaluate and say, does this work for me? And then the third big principle is that it's often natural for us to think, well, and this is true for me, I have trouble with mindfulness meditation. And I think, all right, I'm going to keep doing it. But it so happens that I struggle with that. And so it might be better for me to use a more tried and true method of feeling good, which for me is physical exercise. I almost always feel better after that. Now, I can still practice some mindfulness meditation, but if I just put all my eggs in that basket, I'm probably going to be frustrated because it's not my strength. It's a stretch. It's something that if you find that you're great and that you like mindfulness meditation, you may use that as your practice. And you may find that exercise is more of a stretch for you. So in other words, build on your strengths, build on your past successes, rather than only thinking to yourself, oh, I need to develop a new, or I need to develop my weaknesses. Sure, work on your weaknesses, but don't just work on your weaknesses, or you may feel pretty depressed. Now, let's do it. Let's experience happiness. Now, the first strategy is called 3 good things. 3 good things was developed by Martin Seligman. It's kind of maybe his signature strategy. It's very simple and straightforward. One of the things I like to ask people when we're trying out 3 good things is to ask you all, raise your hand. When you go to bed, do you lie down in your bed and start reviewing all the good things that happened during the day? Do you have a little highlight reel? Or more likely, like Charlie Brown, like this woman in this photo, our eyes are sometimes open and sometimes closed, but our brains are filled with a bit of a negative review of the day, or an anxiety-filled anticipation of the next day. That seems to be naturally where we go when we lie down for bed. So this is Seligman's signature technique, and here's what he recommends. Before you go to sleep, and I have here, or right now, because we're going to try it right now, write down or think about 3 good things that happened during the day or during the last 24 hours. And then track down in your mind, why did those 3 good things happen? What made them happen? Seligman says, in his very optimistic way, that after a week, nearly everyone will just want to continue doing the 3 good things activity because they enjoy it so much. My response to that is, well, yeah, maybe. I think that some people will find this to be quite useful and they will want to continue it. And so if we were live, and so I want to pretend that we're live, I would do the 3 good things activity right now with a volunteer. And so let's pretend someone volunteers. And what I say is, please tell me 3 good things that happened during the last 24 hours. And so try to do that right now with me. Tell me 3 good things that happened during the last 24 hours. And then as you think of these 3 things, I want you to also try to notice or monitor the thoughts or the feelings that come alongside, that come along with those 3 good things. Now, it might take a few moments, it might take a few minutes, and I'm not going to pause for very long, but I'm hoping that right now you're engaging in this process where you're thinking about 3 good things, trying to sift through the last 24 hours and coming up with 3 good things that have happened. The next thing I would do with a volunteer would be to ask the volunteer So what happens when you try to think of those three good things? I think it's worth exploring what happens. There's some natural things. Sometimes it will feel like, oh no, do I have three good things? And you'll start to feel concerned or anxious or have some doubt. Other times you will think of three good things and it'll be great. You'll say, yes, three good things. And then you'll think of why they happened and it will be empowering and nice and positive. Other times in the process, you will begin spoiling the three good things as they come up. I did this recently with a woman via Zoom. She said three good things. I had a really nice cup of coffee. I went for a nice walk with my dog, and I talked to an old friend. And then, of course, as she's telling me this, I'm asking her, so what came up for you as you were thinking about these things? And she said, well, I was just thinking these are just trivial. So the brain can engage sometimes in a process that involves like a spoiling of the good things. Don't be worried if that happens. Just notice it and let it go and continue to think about, well, why did that good cup of coffee happen? Why did the dog walk happen? Why did the conversation with the old friend happen? And what happens usually as you explore that is, well, you had to be aware. You had to know yourself well enough to know what kind of coffee makes for a good cup of coffee for you. You had to be aware that you either needed to or wanted to take the dog for a walk, maybe because the dog needed to or wanted to go for a walk. You made it happen. You got out the leash. You got out your little poop bags. You got all those things. You did some planning. Why did you talk to an old friend? Well, maybe you set aside the time. Maybe it was an example of you being thoughtful or kind, because maybe you were calling the old friend because you thought it would be useful or nice for the old friend. And so as you go through those three good things and why they happened, oftentimes we recognize that what it takes is some self-awareness, some initiative, some planning, and some thoughtfulness or kindness or interest in other people's well-being or welfare of your pets. Those are all good things that underlie the good things that happened. So why does three good things work? And I'm going to say that it works not only for people who are, quote, in the normal range, but also people who have been diagnosed with major depressive disorder. They report feeling better after doing the three things homework. So as I mentioned before, most naturally, when we go to bed, inevitably embark on either a negative review of what happened, right? Or an anxiety-filled anticipation of what might happen tomorrow. Our brains naturally go to those places. Perfectly fine. This will still happen. Three good things does not completely eliminate that. But thinking three good things shifts you part way. It moves you a little bit out of that natural track of negativity. In addition, identifying why those good things happened seems to, for whatever reason, and there's probably an electroneurochemical explanation for this, but it seems to activate a brain search toward positive and empowering explanations or attributions. In other words, to what do we attribute those three good things? You know, you might say it was just luck, or it was because someone else was thoughtful. What I encourage when I'm working with people individually is to go a little deeper than that. Well, why would someone be thoughtful to you? Why did they call you? Why did they do something nice for you? Why are you lucky? You know, what made it? How did you end up being lucky and having that good cup of coffee or whatever it was that you attribute to luck? Usually, if you dig a little deeper, you'll find that you did some things to cause the good things. And that's part of the efficacy of the 3 good things technique. Now, almost all of positive psychology to some extent has to do with this attentional focus or tug of war that goes into our brains. Shall we dwell on, be preoccupied with the negative? Shall we orient ourselves toward the positive? Shall we focus our attention in a very constructive way on exactly what we want to do? Or will we be sort of distracted and find ourselves not really focusing our attention on that constructive, positive thing that we wanted to accomplish? This brings us to strategy number 2, and this is related to strategy number 1, but also to all the other strategies. And it has to do with attention training or attentional control. In other words, what do we do with our attention? What are we focusing on now? I'm hoping to some extent you're focusing on what I'm saying, and maybe you're reading the words on this PowerPoint slide. Now, the interesting thing is that the study of attention control is oftentimes in contemporary research also the study of what we call mindfulness or mindfulness meditation. What's fascinating to me about this is that almost always we fail at mindfulness meditation. We fail, and that failure is another obstacle to our eudaimonic happiness. Because I wanted to concentrate and focus on reading this book or listening to this presentation. I wanted to focus on the joy of walking my dog, and yet my mind got distracted. I wanted to sit and breathe and do my mindfulness meditation, but I didn't do a very good job. Well, even though we're not very good at it and we always fail, there's a Harvard study that researched 2,000 participants, and they found that simply paying attention to what you're doing increases happiness ratings. There's a man named John Kabat-Zinn who has advocated for this approach for a long time, since the 1970s, where we just become more mindful, more in the moment, and more oriented to what's happening now. It's a simple ask, but it's a hard one. Partly because the brain is an amazing organ that sits right on top of everything. And so if I just say to you right now, think of your toes, you will think of your toes, and boom, it happens. If I say, notice your breathing. Now, that's just your body. I can trigger those things by just saying them. We also can time travel with our attention. If I say, I bet you can remember your 6th grade teacher. What did you think of that 6th grade teacher? You can be back in the classroom in 6th grade in an instant. Or if I say, what do you suppose you're going to be doing tomorrow? Boom, whoop, you can be in the future. So the amazing brain is a profoundly powerful organ, and it also causes us trouble because it can flip back and forth, and the attention can focus on so many different things so quickly. And yet, research would suggest if we can keep most of our attention on what we're doing, we will feel better. So this is a pretend activity. I sometimes used to do this in psychotherapy with teenagers and young adults, especially when they were having trouble sleeping. So they were suffering from insomnia, and I would do this activity with them. If we were doing this in person, I would say, okay, everyone, for 2 minutes, I would like you to just notice your breathing and count your out breaths. So with each out breath, you'd say 1, 2, and you would mentally count them, not out loud, but you would just notice them. And, probably now I'm going to backtrack and say, just count your in breaths. 1, and then out. 2. Now, when we're doing this mentally, if you try to do it for 2 minutes, you may lose track. And so just go back to 1. So if you find yourself, you can't remember if you were at 4 or 5, You can either take up wherever you want to, 5, 6, whatever, or go back to 1. What's important is to be mindfully non-judgmental of losing track, because losing track, if you do this long enough, is natural. It's so natural that if you're going to use this for the treatment of insomnia, I would say, well, don't even count. Just stay with the number 1. Just say 1 each time, or just use a mantra, Om, each time, or just breathe and notice your breathing each time. Because if you work your brain toward counting, sometimes it gets invested in counting accurately, and then it becomes harder to sleep. And so although maybe counting sheep works for some people, oftentimes it's too much of an achievement-oriented activity. And so instead, just say the word 1 over and over again, or the word Om, or it doesn't have to be spiritual. But it could be also. I have a friend who likes to say to himself, I am here, here I am. And he finds that to be a very spiritually grounding mantra or short statement to say along with each breath. A little bit of background knowledge and some tricks around mindfulness. The fancy Zen yoga people say the mind is like a yapping dog or a barking dog. And so we need to give it a bone. That's what we're doing when we count, or we say the number 1, or we use a mantra. What's also important is to balance how much you care about being mindful with not caring at all about being mindful. I know that sounds a little bit woo-woo, but if we try too hard and it becomes an achievement-oriented mindfulness practice, we then are losing the point, and we will gain frustration and become less calm and peaceful. Another trick or skill to work on as you're doing a breathing activity or mindfulness meditation is to extend your out-breath just a little bit. Some people talk about square breathing, where you breathe in 4, out 4, 4, 4, 4, 4. I don't know what that is, but really to decrease the stimulation of your sympathetic nervous system and activate your parasympathetic nervous system, which is the part of our nervous system that activates relaxation, decreases blood pressure, slows respiration, decreases heart rate. That parasympathetic nervous system tends to be more activated with a slow and longer out breath. And some people even talk about the sweet spot, where you've exhaled completely and you're just lingering there, noticing the peacefulness. Don't do that, though, if it makes you feel panicky. Breathe in, and it might be better for you, because again, this is always an individualized process, and it's something that's practice. And you notice here, I'm saying practice does not make perfect. That's so important to remember. Practice makes practice. It's a process. We do it for the process, not for the outcome. A little or big take-home message associated with mindfulness meditation. It's a lot about accepting failure, because we will never perfectly achieve mindfulness. And we are non-judgmentally accepting of when our mind goes another direction and gets us distracted. We accept that. We value the process. It's not about achieving mindfulness or achieving relaxation, which are kind of different, but kind of correlated with one another. It's about the experience or the process of taking time to try, but not try too hard to achieve mindfulness. Again, I know that sounds a little weird, but it's true. So one other little story before I go on to the next strategy is there's a lot of stuff out there on the power of positive mental focus. You can see here the quote from William Arthur Ward: if you can imagine it, you can achieve it. If you can dream it, you can become it. I just want to say that's BS. I know a lot of people believe in this law of attraction, and there's some tiny truth to it. But for the most part, I can imagine myself dunking the basketball, right? I can imagine doing that. I can imagine myself consulting with the president. You know, there are a lot of things I can imagine, and yet they're physically impossible, right? You know, there's no special secret to this. Now, so there are exaggerations of something that might help us a little bit in our lives. We want to dream, we want to imagine things, but we should also try to be realistic, because otherwise we will often be frustrated. So one quick story, and then I'll keep moving. So many years ago, I was trained in clinical hypnosis, and I had practiced it in a variety of circumstances. And I have a 10-year-old boy who comes to see me for counseling. He comes with his foster mom. They're in the waiting room. I go up to greet him, and I was maybe I was feeling impulsive, but I didn't use good judgment, because he had 4 warts on his bottom lip, and he had 4 warts on his top lip. And I said to him, "Oh, I see that you've got some warts on your lips." Great way to greet a 10-year-old. Of course, probably scared him to death and made him think he'd never want to come back and see me. But I said to him, because I had just read an article on 49 out of 53 cases of warts were cured with hypnosis. I said, "So you're going to get those things frozen off? What do they do? But if you don't want to, I'd be happy to hypnotize you, because hypnosis can make warts go away," right? This is my really bad rapport establishing technique. So we go in, we have the session, no more talk about that. He mostly looks scared. The next week he comes back, and his foster mom is with him again. And that wasn't part of the plan, because she wasn't supposed to come. It was supposed to be just him and me. But she says, "Well, you know why I'm here?" I said, "No, I don't." And she says, "Well, I'm here because he wants you to hypnotize him for the warts on his lips, but he's afraid to be alone with you. And so he wants me to sit in." Great situation, which I immediately regret having said I could do that. I have read research articles on hypnosis for warts, but I've never done it. So I look up some standard induction or suggestion process with him, and I do it. And he just looks like he's kind of squirmy the whole time. I do a hypnotic induction. He's kind of moving around. He's wiggly. He's kind of fidgety. I think to myself, this is going nowhere. It's terrible. At the end, I give him a post-hypnotic suggestion. I tell him to put a little bit of baby oil on each of the warts every night, and to say to himself, "My body made the warts. My body can take the warts back." So I leave him with that. I think this is a complete failure. I'll probably never see this kid again. But lo and behold, he's back the next week, and he has no warts on his lips. And I'm like, whoa, what happened? Did you go to a real doctor and get them frozen off? And he says, "No, I did what you said, and they went away." He thought I was like the best counselor ever for about one session, and then everything went south again. But my point is that yes, of course, our brain and our psyche are powerful things, but generally they're more powerful when it comes to stuff within ourselves and our body, or our small circle of influence. And so if you're going to do mindfulness meditation, if you're going to set goals, if you're going to use the power of positive thinking, pick some realistic goals and try to focus as best you can on those. I think you can give yourself a little mental edge that way, but it's not magic. That's my secret, is that positive mental focus is not magic, but it can be helpful. It can be that much helpful, and that's a good thing. So strategy number 3 is called savoring. So what is savoring? Savoring is the deliberate effort, conscious, intentional, deliberate effort to extend and expand positive experiences. The research on this is pretty darn significant, that if you savor your positive, uplifting, inspirational experiences, your mood in general will increase, and your satisfaction with life will increase. So in other words, what you're supposed to do is to track or notice when you're having fun. Track or notice when you are experiencing a meaningful moment, maybe with somebody, maybe with someone you care about or love. Notice those things and savor it, much like you would savor fine wine or cheese, or for me, a really good pastry. Now, it's a good analogy because oftentimes we can gobble down our chocolate or our pastry or, drink whatever it is we're drinking too fast that we enjoy. We can do it too fast. We can gulp it down. We can chomp on it. And so what they're saying is linger with it, okay? Linger with it. It's a good metaphor. You might do that with your next walk or your next run or your next time out in nature, because there's really good evidence that being out in nature also can contribute to a healthy mental state. That's savoring. Now, the obstacle is we mostly do the opposite of savoring. We will spoil our good experiences. Maybe I'll be out for a walk. I'm going up to the M at the University of Montana, and I think, I'm out of shape. I think, I used to be able to make it so much faster. Or I think, I wish the weather was a little nicer. Or I wish there weren't so many other people on the trail. Or we can dampen or spoil our good experiences. It's very natural for us to savor the negative, to chew on our mistakes, right? And I know whenever I do this survey, does anyone get stuck chewing on or savoring the negatives in your life? Yes, we do. Yes, we do. We can never completely stop ourselves from doing that. It's a natural obstacle to happiness. But that's why if we go back up here, it's the deliberate effort to extend and expand our positive experiences. It doesn't happen automatically. There needs to be some intentionality with savoring. That's what makes it work. It's, again, part of that attentional training. What shall we do? What shall we focus on? Shall we focus on the negative? Shall we focus on extending the positive? Now, savoring sometimes is easier if you do mutual savoring. Mutual savoring involves getting a friend and saying, remember when? And remember when a positive thing happened or a funny thing happened. Turns out, by doing mutual savoring with a friend or a family member or someone who you feel connected with, can improve your mood and improve your sense of hope. It also increases the likelihood of you repeating the activity, because you and the friend or family member might start planning. Let's do that again. We had a great trip. We had a great time. We really like running together. Let's do this again. And so mutual savoring can be easier because we're doing it with someone, and it also is a natural way that friends and family talk to one another anyway. Strategy number 4. We're making progress here. We're getting toward the end. Number 4 is gratitude. Now, of course, everyone knows we should cultivate an attitude of gratitude. I just did a workshop, 6-hour workshop with mental health professionals, and one of the professionals said, I hate all this gratitude stuff. I'm sick of it. Everybody talks about gratitude. Well, we'll put a little bookmark there because we'll come back to that. But if I were into marketing and advertising, I would say, do you want to increase your optimism? Do you want to improve your life satisfaction? Do you want to be healthier? Do you want to exercise more? Well, then weave intentional gratitude into your life. Well, my mental health professional friend would say, don't like that, just sick of it. So I said to her, well, then don't do it, right? Then don't do it. Focus on a different evidence-based approach to happiness. Because sometimes our mind is built, instead of counting up gratitude, it counts up hassles. I remember myself personally having a really rough 2 years. There were a lot of bad things going on, and I got a lot of professional rejections during that time. I don't often tell people this, but I did not get hired in a tenure track position for the University of Montana until my 5th try. So I got rejected 4 times. Anyway, so we have rejections. We have things that we feel bitter about and resentful for, and there often are many. But here's the deal. If we count up our rejections, if we count up our failures, if we count up the times when the universe or the world or whatever we think of let us down, it's like counting cloudy days. If you count cloudy days, the outcome is pretty predictable. You will get depressed unless you love cloudy days. So if you count up the negative, it will really get you oriented toward feeling bad. Gratitude breaks that up a little bit, similar to 3 good things. So that's gratitude part 2. Gratitude part 3 is identify. This is really the homework. Who do you want to express gratitude toward? I worked with my mental health professional volunteer on this, and we actually identified someone that she really wanted to express gratitude toward, but she didn't want to do the same old kind of gratitude. So then I got her to be specific. You want this to be in person? You want to do it through email or text or letter or postcard? So pick your modality. How do you want to express it? Who do you want to express it to? And maybe the best is face to face, where you look toward the person and tell the person that wonderful thing. But here's one of the keys is you should not worry about the results. Now, this is impossible. It's kind of like mindfulness meditation. You can't not worry about the response. You can't not care about the response, but we should try to shrink it. I mean, the main point of me expressing gratitude to you for watching for so long is not to make me feel good. It's to appreciate your focus and attention and to let you know how much I appreciate that. So I deliver the gratitude. Now, I may have some frosting on the gratitude cake. I may feel good about it too. And that's natural. But I shouldn't have some heavy expectation that if I express gratitude to Jen for organizing this, that she should feel good and reciprocate and express her gratitude to me. That's kind of manipulative gratitude. So try to avoid that. But that doesn't mean that you should completely ignore how it feels to deliver it, because that's something often worth savoring. Strategy number 5, we're heading down the home stretch, called your best self. Now, this was developed by a woman named Laura King, a professor at the University of Missouri, Columbia. She found in repeated research studies that if she gave people the assignment of spending 10 minutes a day for 4 consecutive days writing a narrative description of their best possible future self, that people felt better. So 10 minutes a day for 4 consecutive days. This is for those of you who like to write. Write about your best possible future self. It doesn't even have to be 10 minutes a day. It could be, but some of you who like to write, you might do it for 30 minutes. Who knows? Pick a point in the future. Write about what you'll be doing and thinking then. And those things that you're doing and thinking, they need to kind of capture a vision of you being your best possible self. What are the results of that? If I hang out here for a minute, what are the results of that? People increase their sense of hope, and they find that they are in better moods. Interesting. It's probably not a bad activity also to facilitate goal setting, because when we think about our best possible selves, we probably also naturally think about, how am I going to get there? Here's a little bonus. Before I end, I want to do this bonus on the physical, the spiritual, the cultural roads to well-being. or eudaimonic happiness. The first one is movement. The research is really, really strong. As it turns out, exercise, movement, is a highly effective approach to treating depression. In fact, if we were able to fund exercise research for depression at the level that we fund pharmacological treatments for depression, we would find that exercise is superior to any kind of medication you might take to the treatment of depression. Now, that doesn't mean it works for everybody, and I'm not giving a blanket statement, but in general, and the research to date suggests this, and what is the additional benefit is that exercise tends to not have adverse side effects or adverse medical events that are associated with using exercise. But who likes to get sweaty and sore? You can kind of get a feel there for that's what undermines it. Oftentimes we don't enjoy it. There are ways to set goals and to accomplish those goals. And I really recommend that you explore some of that. How do we set good goals? What do we do to accomplish positive goals in our lives? Also, the active pursuit of meaning, meaningful interactions with our friends, with our family, with our community, that those tend to have a big boost for not only our short-term happiness, but our long-term well-being. On the other hand, it's so darn easy to watch television and just play on Instagram or Facebook or scroll. A lot of people got into doom scrolling. There are lots of ways to make ourselves feel bad. A third physical, spiritual, cultural road to well-being is regular involvement in spiritual, religious, or social justice groups. This is related to the active pursuit of meaning as well. But even though we know sometimes that our regular involvement with those groups can bring us up, it's so hard some days to give up the idea of staying home and feeling good in the moment. So I just wanted to notice those three ways that we can also move toward greater well-being. So one last positive distraction, and then I'm also going to talk a tiny bit about resources at the end. Life is hard. We all experience this thing Freud called common unhappiness, and we wonder about ourselves, and that "are you happy" kind of question is a very depressing kind of question. So I recommend that you stop monitoring that very closely. Emotions also can be a pain, and sometimes we need distractions. I talked about this a little bit at the beginning. So one thing that is clear for most people is that there are certain songs, there's certain music out there that will help you to feel your feelings. Even if you're feeling down or despondent or depressed, a song can help you be in sync with that and feel like it's resonating with your feelings. And that's all right, because we should not avoid feeling sad, bad, or scared. Those are real experiences, and we learn from them. But it's also nice to identify songs that boost your mood. And so I'm going to end with one. When I was in ninth grade, I had a coach who was an incredibly good coach, and he would play the same song for us at the beginning of every basketball game. Now, I say ninth grade basketball. Some of you might think, well, he was a freshman. Well, that was before there were such things as freshmen in high school. High school was 3 years, and junior high was 7th through 9th grade. Now I'm dating myself a little bit, but that's okay, because the song will date me as well. So I'm just going to sing it, just the first couple lines, just to give you a sense of it's really hard to feel terribly depressed when you sing this song. And for me, it brings back incredibly positive memories. Here we go. Oh, wait, I have a microphone. Jeremiah was a bullfrog was a good friend of mine. I never understood a thing. Oh, anyway, I'm going to stop because I said the lyrics, but you get the feel, and the lyrics go on to joy to the world. Anyway, not a perfect song for everyone. It works for me. I recommend that you continue to weave some positive distractions into your lives. It's not the goal to be positively distracted all the time, but there's nothing wrong with using it. Stunning conclusions, the brain, our culture, the news, we're all built to track negative things. And sometimes we're really triggered by and built to track those things toward which we feel outrage. Well-being or eudaimonic happiness requires at least awareness, intention, effort, reminders, and persistence. It's not a one-shot thing. Most of us will forget these 5 things. We will forget to apply these 5 things or even one of them unless we have some reminder plan. What kind of reminder plan works well? I don't know what works best for you. Think about what's worked in the past. Also, having a buddy to do this with is often helpful. I recommend that you select and practice a few evidence-based positive psychology interventions that we've covered today and see what happens. Famous psychologist named B.F. Skinner once said, experiment. And I agree, experiment. I'm going to close with some words from a happiness student and then the resources. This was from a student who took my semester-long happiness course. She actually wrote this to me after about a month or so. She says, words are inadequate to express my gratitude for the happiness class. Literally transforming my life after a very difficult and sad 9 months. Plus, it's a heck of a lot of fun. Again, thank you from a happiness class student. I share this because I think happiness classes focusing on evidence-based happiness, positive psychology interventions can make a difference. It's not magic, but it can make a difference. There are lots of resources out there. For more homework ideas, I just gave you 5 today. Do an internet search with my name plus happiness homework. You'll find my blog, and there's a bunch of different happiness homework assignments on there. Check them out if you want. You don't have to. The University of Pennsylvania has a positive psychology center. That's where Martin Seligman is and was when he developed positive psychology. So they have a really resource-rich positive psychology center. There's also a thing called the Greater Good magazine that's produced through Berkeley, UC Berkeley. Check it out. It's got lots of good information. There's a positivepsychology.com website, also really good resources. Rita and I did a Happy Habits for Hard Times series. It's really kind of a goofy set of homemade videos. Certainly you can access those by going to the College of Education website or just Googling our names and Happy Habits series. So I want to thank you all for listening. I also want to give a big thanks to Jen for organizing this and making it possible and doing that technology. Thanks to all of you, and good luck in the pursuit of happiness.